Hello guys, welcome to the channel. Peter here. Today we are going to start a playlist, and in this playlist we are going to build a full stack web application. So we are going to build it using MongoDB Express, React and Node.js, and also so many beautiful frameworks that comes with this entire process. So I'm going to show you how to create a server, I'm going to show you how to connect to a database, how to perform advanced searching for your MongoDB using MongoDB aggregate functions. I'm also going to show you how to use React Router DOM 6 and also to how to use the data fetching library in your React application. Now, this project is a project that you can extend and add many features to. Then you can also put it in your portfolio to present to possible employers or just showcase to your friends and family. All right, so this is what we are building. This is our front-end interface. You can see we have a food image. We are building a food recipe application. So we have a food image. So once you land, this is kind of like our home page and also our login page. Now, once you come here, you see our company name, Foodie. Then you type in your email to log in. I'm going to put in my password. And then I click on the login button. Now there's a loader. You see the beautiful loader that came up. Then these are images of recipes that are in the database. And then you look, I have a dashboard. So immediately I log in, I find myself in a dashboard here. I have the home. I have this add recipe. When I click on it, I will be able to add recipe. And I have this drag and drop here, so I can drag an image here, or I can just choose a file. So I have this beautiful drag and drop. I can add a note, and then what else can we do? I can add a recipe. Okay, I can view my recipes. So these recipes are the recipes that belong to me. So we have many users on the system. For this particular, when I go to this my recipes here, I see the recipes that belong to me. If I go to the home page, I see the recipe that belongs to everybody. So if you look at this mail here, this is test@gmail.com, and then this one is to@gmail.com. So if you look at my dashboard up here, you see that I'm to@gmail.com. If I go to my recipes, I'm only going to see the ones that I've created myself. Then I can search from the home page. If I type rice now, I believe I should have only this one here. So if I hit enter, and then it is searching, then it brings rice for me. One other thing that we did here in this application is we added what we call a fuzzy search. So even if you make spelling mistake, let's say you want to type jollof and you type, let's say you make a mistake in your spelling and you type JLLOF. So that is not the correct spelling of jollof. This is the correct spelling of jollof, but you made the mistake. Even if you made this kind of mistake and you search, you are still going to be able to find this jollof rice. So we implemented that feature. And then once you are done creating recipes, viewing recipes, let's say you want to take a look at a particular recipe, you can click on view more to view a single recipe. And then it loads up, then you see the image of a single recipe, and then you have more information. So here now you have the ingredients, then you have the description of how you are going to cook this food or meal or whatever. If you go back to the home, you notice that the whole thing is cut short. It's not everything that is being shown. Same thing as my recipes. It's not everything that is being shown. But when you click on view more, you have more information. We are going to build the server of our application using Node.js, Express, MongoDB. We are going to use Cloudinary to store our images. So we are using Cloudinary to store our images. Then on the client side, we are going to use React.js. We are going to use the React Context API. We're also going to use SWR, a data fetching library by Vercel. Then we are using React Router DOM 6. So if you're ready to get started with the video, let's go. We are going to start off by creating a folder to contain our application. So I'm going to say right here in my terminal, I am in my desktop. So I'm going to say mkdir foodie, which is going to be the name of the application, and I hit enter. Now, if you look at my desktop, you notice that a folder was created called foodie. We are going to have a folder for our backend. So I'm going to say, go into the folder called foodie. I'm going to seed into Foodie. So I'm moving into Foodie. Now, right inside Foodie, I'm going to create another folder. So I'm going to say mkdir, and I'll call it backend. So if I do ls, which is listing the files in my Foodie directory, I have the backend. I'm going to clear. So now, the backend is going to contain our server that will be serving our front end. So some people, or depending on your choice, you can decide to create them in separate folders, in separate places, but I'll be having them in one specific folder. Now, I'm going to go into the backend by saying cd backend. So inside the desktop, I'm inside the Foodie folder, and I want to go into the backend folder. So right now, I'm inside the backend folder. So everything that contains my backend application would be living here. Now, what do we have to do? We have to start off by installing the packages that we need. We are building this application using Express, and we're also using Yarn as a package manager. So we're going to start off by saying yarn init. So this will initialize a package.json file for us. And we're going to say yarn init-y so that we say yes to every question that we asked. Now, this has been done. We now have a package.json. The next thing we need to do is to install our packages. Some packages that we need right now. So I'm going to say yarn add express. After express, I'm going to add helmet. I'm going to add course. So let me install this one for now. So the application is done installing. I'll clear. Now I also need to install types for nodes. I'm going to yarn add -d. Remember, the -d flag is to say that this is a dev dependency. We're going to say -d, and we need to add types for nodes. So we're adding types for node. We are adding types for express. And if you remember, we installed what's it called? Helmet. So I'm going to say types / helmet. Do we have types for helmets? Don't know. Now the application is done installing. I think we forgot to add for course. So let's yarn add types / course. So we have added all the types. Now we have this. If I were to run ls again, which is list, and it's going to list all the files in my backend directory. Now I have my node modules, my package.json, and my yarn.log. So I'm going to open it up in VS Code by typing code period or dot and enter. Right now the application has opened up in VS Code, and I have my package.json and my node modules. Right away, I noticed that instead of installing the course types as dev dependency, I've installed it as dependencies as a dependency. So I have to go and fix that by going back. First of all, I'm going to say yarn remove add types / course. So I want to remove it. Then I'm going to install it back by saying yarn add -d to make sure it goes in that directory in the dev dependency side. So I've installed it and it's done installing. So now if I go back, it is now here in the dev dependencies. Now our main entry is going to be index.js. Now one other thing I need us to do is to add TypeScript to this project because we'll be using TypeScript for this project. So I will still go back to my terminal here and I will say yarn add -d. Remember, TypeScript is a dev dependency. I'm going to say add TypeScript, and I'm going to add a TypeScript package that is going to help us to run our application without compiling down to JavaScript, which is called tsnode. So this is going to enable us to be able to run our TypeScript code without first compiling down to JavaScript. Otherwise, we would have to first of all compile our application to JavaScript before we are able to run it. But this will help us to do that. So I'm going to add that. So now I have TypeScript and I have tsnode in my project. Now, the next thing that we are going to do is to add a tsconfig.json. So still back to my terminal, still inside the backend here, I'm going to say npx tsc, which comes with TypeScript once you install it, --init. This is going to generate configuration files for me, tsconfig file for me. So I hit enter, and it says created tsconfig.json with some properties for me. Let's take a look at that. So if I go down here, we now have these TypeScript configurations, compiler options, and many more. You can add them. You can look at them. You can look at the TypeScript docs for what you can do with these things. As for us, I've gone ahead to set up the compilations that we need. We have a target, which is ES 2016, and the libraries that we'll be using are the ES6 and the DOM, and our module that our TypeScript is going to compile to is common.js. Our root directory is the source. Our base URL is /. We also say resolve module to true. Allow JS. Should we allow TypeScript, JavaScript here? We say yes. And our out directory is build. So when TypeScript builds our application, compiles it into JavaScript, the folder that is going to output it to is going to be called build. And we have we have some other configuration here. Our types, we know our type root is going to be as types, and we want to include everything in the source, everything there in the source. We also want to exclude the node modules public. In this case, we're actually not going to have a public, so I'll remove that. So with this now, our TypeScript configuration is ready. The other thing we need to set up is ESLint. Now to set up ESLint, we have to install a couple of packages. Let's go back to our terminal. I'll clear. We're going to say yarn add -d. They are all dev dependencies. We're going to install ESLint, our TypeScript-ESLint/ESLint plugin, our TypeScript-ESLint/parser, ESLint-config-prettier. This last one is just going to make sure that our ESLint and our prettier does not have conflicting rules. So any rules that we have there, we are going to make sure that the one from prettier overrides that if the case needs that. So I'm going to install this. Function is not installing, and we are going to clear. Let's go back here to our VS Code. We have, if you go to our package.json now, we have the ESLint and the following packages installed with it. Now, we also need to create a file, but let's go back to the terminal. So instead of creating manually, we're going to run npx ESLint --init. So this is going to create a configuration file for us. But before it does that, it's going to ask us some questions about what we want to do. So let's hit enter. And then it asks what we want to do. We are going to say to check syntax, find problems, and enforce code size. And we are going to say yes, JavaScript modules. We are not using any of these. And does your project use TypeScript? Yes, we do. And then we are going now go down and press on space to select. So if you don't press on space, it's not going to select. Just go down with your arrow key, press on space, then hit enter. We are going to say yes, use a popular style guide. And we are going to go with the default one there. And we don't want a JavaScript file. It's asking us what kind of file we want to create for us. We're going to use JSON, and then it's installing some packages that you might need to install. Okay, it's going to ask us, yeah, we want to install them. So just hit on enter. And we are using yarn as our package manager, so choose yarn. So we're installing all these packages. So the packages are not installing. Let me clear. Let's go back. We now have a file here. If you look at this page, we now have .ESLint rc.json with some default configuration for us. Here I've added some rules. I have added prettier here. This is going to make sure that each time ESLint and prettier conflict, the ones from prettier, the rules from prettier would be the one to be used. Now also, if I go down in the rules, I've added two rules. I said no unused var, so I don't want you to declare anything that you are not going to use. And then I set it to error. So there are status that you can add off or one. So if you add one, it's going to throw a warning, but I want it to be an error. So if you create a variable that you're not using, you're going to get an error. Then we have this one, we want a consistent type definitions. So if you don't follow that, we also get an error from ESLint. The next thing we need to set up is prettier. So let's install prettier. Let's go back here. We're going to say yarn add -d prettier. Prettier is not installing. Let's clear and go back to this place here. So we're going to create a file right here in the top directory. I'm going to call it .prettier rc. And then we are going to create prettier rules. I only have two here I'm going to use. Single quote is false. Some people like single quote. So I'm just going to say that single quote is false and tab width is 2. Very simple rules. You can read about prettier rules and then probably want to add more to it. I just have a very simple one here. All right. So now I've set up prettier. I've set up ESLint. And that is that. Then I also have the whole application setup. Now, all our files for this application is going to live in the source folder. So let's just go back to the top directory, right click and click on new folder, type in source, src. So everything is going to be here. Now, let me create a file here. I'll call it index.ts and let's just say console. Inside index.ts, let's say console.log hello world. So we need to find a way to compile this down to JavaScript. Now that will take us back to our package.json script. So let's go and add a script here before the dependency. We're going to say scripts. So what script are we going to add? Now I'm going to have a dev script. So if I say yarn dev and I want you to run npx nodemon. So I'm going to create a nodemon.json file that will be run each time I run yarn dev. Remember, nodemon helps in the development server to restart whenever the file changes. We don't want each time something changes in our application for us to come back and restart the server. So once nodemon to do it automatically, let's install nodemon. So I'm going to say yarn add -d nodemon or nodemon, whichever one you call it is fine. So we have installed nodemon now. So whenever we say yarn dev, we are going to run npx nodemon. But what is this script that nodemon.json is going to contain? We are going to go back to the top directory again, right click and click on new file. Let's call it nodemon.json. And right here, we are going to have a script which is simply going to have watch is source. So we want it to watch the source folder. Remember this source folder we created here that is going to contain all our TypeScript file. I want it to watch the extension .ts and .js. Remember we allow JavaScript, so you can actually use JavaScript right here in this application. So if any of these changes, then we want nodemon to run. Then what is the command that we want you to execute? You want you to execute the command npx tsnode. Remember, tsnode allows us to run our TypeScript without first compiling down to JavaScript. So now, when we say npx tsnode /source/index.ts, which is this our index.ts here, so we want to run this file here, which is our entry file. So when this compiles down, it's going to become index.js, which is what we added in our package.json as our main here. So that is what we have in our nodemon.json. So when we run yarn dev, that's going to run. Now on our start, when we run yarn start, we are going to run yarn run build first. So we are going to call this build script. And so we're using this double ampersand here. We are going to say run this first, then run this. So once we build, I'll come on to the build script slightly. Once we build, we are going to then use node itself and say, remember our build scripts, our build folder, when TypeScript compiles our application, it's going to output everything in the build. If you look at our tsconfig.json, we have an output directory called build. So that's why we are saying that at this point here, once this application has been built, then we want you to go into the build folder, index.js, which is what we have here, which we set here, index.js, and then start it. So then for the build, how are we going to build? We need to use the rimraf package. So let's install that. So I'm going to say yarn add rimraf. So we are done installing rimraf. Let's go back to package.json. Now, what does rimraf do? Rimraf is just going to remove the folder for us. It's going to remove the folder, this particular folder. So what we are saying here is when the build script is run, remove this /build folder, remove it, and then run tsc. Tsc is the TypeScript command to compile down our TypeScript to Node.js. So rimraf is going to remove the folder, and then tsc runs, compiles all our TypeScript to Node.js. Now that is that. Then we have lint. So when we run yarn lint, we want to say npx ESLint. So we want to run ESLint, and we're going to tell it to ignore path. Now you can create an ESLint ignore folder whereby you tell ESLint the files to ignore. But in our own case, we are telling ESLint that we want it to ignore the same thing that our git ignore is going to have. We don't have a git ignore folder right now or file right now, but what this simply means is that ignore the same path or whatever is in the git ignore. And we also want you to look at these extensions .js, .ts, and we're passing a --fix here flag, which simply means that if you find any issue, you should fix it. Then we have our yarn format, which is simply we are running Prettier, and we are doing the same thing here. We are saying ignore the same thing that the git ignore ignores. and we're also passing it a regex telling it the kind of extension we want to watch, .js, .ts, .json. We want it to format in all of this. So with this now done, if I go back and I run yarn dev, we expect the node script to run. So we're expecting this to run, and we're expecting to have that this running. But what we want to do, let's test out that our build script works fine. So let's run yarn build, and let's see if we are going to have a folder called build outside, and then we are going to have the index.js inside. So let's go back to my terminal here. I'm going to clear, and I'm going to run yarn build. Remember, I'm still inside the backend directory. So if I run yarn build now, it says rimraf./build. So if it exists, it removes that, and then it runs tsc. So let's check our what's it called, VS Code again. So if you look at our VS Code now, we now have a folder called build, and if I go inside, we now have index.js that simply contains hello world. So this simply means that it has built successfully. I want to delete that. Yeah. All right. So we have been able to set up our application right now, and our compiling and formatting and every other thing has been set up. Moving on, we now need to set up a server. So let me close this off. Right now, back here in the index.js, there is something that I want to do, which is set up the env. So in the case we want to use environment variable later, we won't have any issue. So I'm going to create a file right here outside of the source in the top directory here. I'm going to go to right click on new file. Let's call it .env. And what do we want to have here? We just want to have a port. So I'm going to set the port of 4000. I save. Now let's create another, still right here, right click and click on new file. Let's create .git ignore. So we want to ignore some file. So anytime that we turn this into a git file, anytime we initialize this with git is going to ignore this file. So we're going to say ignore the node_modules. We don't want anything to do with that. And we also want to ignore the .env. So, and probably we have something like yarn. So this is what we want git ignore to ignore this particular files. So I'm going to close this up. Now, with this being said, to use our environment variable, let's install .env. So .env is going to help us to read our environment variables. So when our application loads, environment variable is going to when our application loads, .env is going to load our environment variables into the node process, and we'll be able to read it from there. So let's say yarn add is a dev dependency -d.env. Let's also add a type for it. So yarn add -d add types /env. So we want to add a type in. All right. So we are done installing. Let's go back to our VS Code. So now we want to set up env .env. I like to do it at the very top to avoid any issue. Maybe in some files, then it's unable to read anything or load. We're unable to use our environment variable. So let's say import. I'm going to say import all as .env from .env. And we're going to configure it immediately. We're going to say .env.config. And this here will help us to load the environment variable into the node process each time our application starts up. So now with this being said, now let's import some packages to start our server. So I'm going to say import express, import request. These are types, response, and application. We are getting all this from the express package. So let's create a server. Let's call it an app, const app, which is going to be of type application is equals to express. So we have created an express application. We are going to say app.use, which is the middleware that is going to run. We are going to say express.json. So this is going to pass our request as JSON. Also need to add another one which will help with passing our request, which is going to be express.url encoded, and we are going to say extended to be true. Setting this up, we also need to import course. So I'm going to say import course from course. We also want to import helmet from helmet, and then we are going to use them here. App.use. I'm going to say course. So this simply means that without passing any option to course, I'm simply telling that any request from any domain is allowed. I'm also going to add helmet. So we're going to say helmet. So once you use helmet, so helmet is going to help us to add HTTP headers to our application. So now with this being set up here, we might come back later to add some other packages, but for now, this is fine. Let's create a port. So we're going to const port is equal to. Now, if you remember, we already set up environment variable and we added a port there, which is port 4000. So we're going to say process, which we are trying to read from the environment variable, process.env.port, which is what we call it. And we're going to say it is a number. So we are casting it to a number. And we are going to say that if you find out that, then use that. If you don't find it, use 5000. So it's complaining that I should first of all convert this to unknown because this is either a string or undefined, and I cannot just change it to a number. So I'm just going to say as unknown as number, and that takes care of that. But we know very well that this is going to be a number, but Typescript doesn't know that. So let's give our server. Our server is going to listen. So we say app.listen. On what port? We are going to say port. And we also pass in a function that is going to call whenever it gets the port. So we say it gets the port, and then we say console. We just want to print to the console dot log. Let's say server. Can't spell server now. Server listening on port. What port? Let's find out by using this. Since we are using template string, we just pass the port. So if this is true, then we should have port 4000. Else we should have 5000, which is what we have done here. All right. So we have this ready now. We can also let's create a simple route. So we say app.all. So what this simply means is anyone I find, and we're going to say asterisk, which is a wildcard. So what we want to simply do, we're going to pass in here request, which is going to be of type request, and then response, which is going to be of type response. So you use this in the case where you have already set all the route, and probably somebody wants to go to a route that does not exist, like 404. So you can use this as a 404 page. So if somebody goes here, then what do you want to tell the person? Want to say res.status is 404, since we don't have that. And we're going to send a JSON, and we're just going to pass in a message that says the route you requested is not found. So if you go to whatever you go to, we don't see it, then you get this. The route you requested is not found. So with this now, our server is set up, and we can test it by running yarn dev. And if we go to any route, since we don't have any route defined, if you go to any route, we're supposed to get this 404. The route you requested is not found. So let's go back to our terminal, and let me clear this. Let's run yarn dev. So we have nodemon running, npx nodemon, which then goes to the nodemon file and then runs this command. It says server is listening on port 4000, so it is reading from my environment variable. So we can then test this application. Let's go to the browser. I'm just going to go to localhost 4000. So I'm expecting a JSON, and it simply says the route you request is not found. It's supposed to be requested. So this is serving. Our application is now listening on the port 4000 and is serving a response. So let's go back and let me just change this to requested. So right now our application is ready to